Let's move on to Streets of New Capenna with 3 quite interesting and quite very different Planeswalkers. The first one is Nixilis, the Adversary. 3 mana Rakdos drop with 3 loyalty counters. He has casualty X. The copy isn't legendary and has starting loyalty X. So, for the price of 3 mana and whatever creature you want to sacrifice, you gain 2 Nixilis. His +1, each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or devil, you gain 2 life. His -2, create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And the -7, target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life. His ult, okay, not bad. It can be lethal, but the casualty in combination with the +1 and the -2, and thinking about all the synergies that are there in Rakdos already, he is a very good Planeswalker. You don't need him in a Rakdos deck, although that might change because another card that will most likely be banned is Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which is one of the most locked in cards into Rakdos at the moment. So he might even see more play now or come Monday. But even if he doesn't get played, he's still a very, very strong Rakdos card. I've seen him on and off in Rakdos decks, and whenever I saw him, he was good, he was great, he did his job. He has so many synergies with other Rakdos cards. He is an A for me, honestly. Especially with the casualty. Like, you bring it in with the casualty, you do a -1 on one of them and the +1 on the other one, and you already have a synergy with himself. So I'll give him A, because I feel he's not as necessary in his archetype, in his decks, as the Wandering Emperor. Actually, let's give him an A+. I'm willing to give him an A+. He is definitely one of the best, or one of the better Planeswalkers out there. Vivian on the Hunt, on the other side. What can I tell you? She's a nice idea. Vivian on the Hunt is a very nice idea, but she's just another step in ramping into mono green that you don't need, because you have enough cards that you can ramp through and ramp into. So you don't really need that like middle step with Vivian, because Vivian is not the finisher for you. And as I was going to say, she's too expensive to just ramp. So she doesn't do the, okay, she is the threat good enough, and she doesn't do the ramp good enough. But let's look into her. She costs 6 mana. She's mono green. 4 loyalty counters. The +2 is you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So this is kind of her ramp ability, but you have to sacrifice a creature, and the creature you bring in can only cost at most 1 more mana than the creature you sacrificed. And like, I think you see the problem there, right? A +1 is mill 5 cards, then put any number of creature cards milled this way into your hand. Nice, I guess. You get some creature cards, but that alone doesn't make her viable. And then the -1, create a 4/4 green Rhino creature, Rhino warrior creature token. It's nice. It's useful, the Rhino token by itself, but not for 6 mana. So to conclude this, Vivian, for her mana cost, she's not big enough of a threat, and she's too expensive to just be a ramp card. So honestly, I'm considering to give her an F, because she's just really bad. But I'm like, she's definitely a D, probably even a D-. I'm honestly thinking about an F as well. That's the options. Like, she's just like, with the other cards, like as we said, with Tamiyo, even in standard, you can make Tamiyo work. You can make her work even in the current standard rotation. With Vivian, how do you make her work? How do you make her a useful Planeswalker card? I'll put the D-/F, and then we'll see what other Planeswalkers we have that are in the very low part. Vivian might be the one card we actually F here. We actually want to delete. Alright, and the last one, Elspeth Resplendent. A 5 mana mono white drop for 5 loyalty counters. +1, choose up to 1 target creature, put the +1/+1 counter and a counter from among flying, first strike, lifelink, or vigilant on it. The -3. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put the permanent card with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then her alt, -7, create 5 3/3 white angel creature tokens with flying. So Elspeth is a good card. It's a very good white card. I mean, white has so many strong Planeswalkers at the moment. The best one will be banned again, but still, you have another Wandering Emperor out there, or like another Emperor out there, and then you have Elspeth in 2 different versions. And Resplendent is also a very good card. She's definitely on the lower end of good white Planeswalkers, but I would still say she is quite good, because you make your creatures stronger. They gain either flying or first strike or lifelink or vigilance, whatever you need at that moment. The -3, I would say, is the weakest of those, because you do look at 7 cards and you can only put a permanent with mana value 3 or less, 1 permanent with mana value 3 or less onto the battlefield, and the rest goes on the bottom of your library. So that is a risky trade-off, a very risky trade-off. But then if you manage her alt, which you quite easily could, you just have an army of angels. So I would say she's definitely the solo white, mono white Planeswalker at the moment that's like more on the lower end of all the white Planeswalkers. But I would still say, with Kaya being out there and Kaito being out there in the B bracket, I think I also give her a B-. I think Kaya creates more value out of herself than Elspeth, but I think Elspeth is up there as well. And there we have 4 Planeswalkers. Karn, Living Legacy. A generic 4 mana drop for 4 loyalty counters. +1, create a tap Power Stone token. Excuse me. -1, pay any amount of mana. Look at that many cards from the top of your library. Then put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And his alt, -7, you get an emblem with tap an untapped artifact you control. This emblem deals 1 damage to any target. So Karn came in with Dominaria United, and Dominaria United and the Brothers War are very heavily focused on artifacts as well. They bring in those Power Stone tokens into the current standard rotation. And Karn is basically the lead card or the lead Planeswalker of this. Thus being said, he has the upside that he's generic, so you can play him in any deck without thinking about, okay, I do need to have that certain mana in there. His +1 and his -1 do have quite the nice synergy. You can create some Power Stone tokens and then use the -1. Overall though, I think in an artifact deck, even though Tezzeret is mono blue, I think Tezzeret is still the better choice in an artifact deck than Karn, over Karn. Just because Tezzeret does more also for mono blue and still does that big focus on artifacts as well. So he combines two things together, whereas Karn is only artifacts, artifacts, and artifacts can be nice, but they are not necessarily that much of a viable strategy overall in the current rotation. That being said, we gave Tezzeret a C+, and I might give Karn just a C, because I do think Tezzeret is the better option of the two, but Karn can be viable and can be good as well in the right deck and in the right random moments. The next one on the list is Ajani Sleeper Agent. He is a 4 potential 3 mana Celestia drop with 4 loyalty counters. So Ajani's +1 is reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, put it into your hand. Otherwise, you may put it on the bottom of your library. The -3 is distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among up to 3 target creatures. They gain vigilance until end of turn. And his ult for the -6 is you get an emblem with whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. So ideally, you would play him in a Celestia Toxic deck with the Venerated Rot Priest, with the Crawling Chorus, with Skrelv. But I feel like he is a bit too slow for that, because like most of those, like the way those Celestia Toxic decks work, ideally, is you have a lot of 1 and 2 mana creatures, you drop them, and then you have your spells to protect them, to proliferate. And Ajani comes in after you kind of already want your board to be filled with toxic creatures, and then you don't play that many creature cards anymore. So all of his creature and planeswalker connected abilities, they are not as strong anymore, because I mean, yes, you can get another creature out of him. That is fine. Or you can, like, it's basically a scry. And if it's creature, draw a card, basically. But the emblem is whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, which whenever you get to that ult, you basically don't really play any creatures anymore, and I don't see any other planeswalker being in a deck with him. The -3 is probably his best overall, at least. You gain the vigilance to gain the +1/+1. You can, though, play him in a Celestia counters deck. That's also possible with the +1/+1 counters. Then you can play him with other planeswalkers as well, as Elspeth Resplendent, as we just saw, comes into mind. But it feels for me like he does a lot of things, but does nothing really good. So I'm on the fence. Like you can pull him off in some Celestia decks with creatures with +1/+1 counters, but it just feels like there's always better options for him. And then the emblem is just comes in at the point where you don't really need it that much, because either you don't play on poison counters, you don't play toxic, then it's not really that useful. And when you play toxic, it's far too late into the game when you actually pull that ult off. I'm thinking we gave Tamiyo a C-/D+. We put her on there, like in between those two. And I honestly think Ajani is around the same, because there's not much synergy, but I think he's probably a bit more useful. So let's give him a clear C-, and then let's see what happens to Tamiyo afterwards. I definitely see him stronger than Tamiyo. So depending on what we do with Tamiyo as well, maybe he's a C for me. Depending, he can work, he has some synergies going for him, but I just don't, like, he doesn't offer anything that way you would go, okay, I would take this card over this card. There's just stronger options in either decks he would be useful in. All right. Now we have Jaya the Negotiator, a 4 mana mono red planeswalker with 4 loyalty counters. She has a +1, create a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess. A -1 exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them, you may play that card this turn. A -2, choose target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you attack this turn, Jaya, Fiery Negotiator, deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures to that creature. Enter alt, the -8, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a red instant or sorcery spell, copy it twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. Now, pulling off the alt is quite hard, but you don't need to pull off that alt because you do have the strong prowess game here. You can play this in a mono red prowess, you can play this in a Boros prowess, you can play this in an Izzet prowess, and you can play this in even a Jeskai prowess, if you want. Probably not that strong Jeskai prowess. I would probably say mono red and Boros prowess are the two good ways to go with this, but you can still utilize her a lot. Be it you want to spam prowess creatures, being you want to rely more on the spell side of the prowess. You can utilize her in a lot of different ways if you are willing to play a lot of spells, a lot of instant and sorceries, or at least non-creature spells in your deck. That being said, outside of that, she lacks a bit of flexibility. Like, yes, whenever you want to go with a lot of spells, especially with red spells, she can be useful. Chandra, in a simple burn deck, Chandra Dress to Kill is better than her. She's cheaper. She gives you she also gives you cards, and she gives you mana, and she deals damage to herself. Overall, Jaya is a great card, I think, a great Planeswalker. I would give her a... Looking at Kaya, I think I would give her a B as well. I think Kaya and Jaya, and this is not because they're named almost the same, I swear, but I think they have a lot in common when it comes to their potential, but also their restrictions. So I think B is a good spot for Jaya here. And then we have good old Liliana, being the best black Planeswalker in standard rotation at the moment, arguably. 3 mana, mono black, 3 loyalty counters, and she screams mono black control. +1, each player discards a card. -2, target player sacrifices a creature. -6, separate all permanents target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of their choice. So you have your opponent have to choose between this side or this side. Do you want to keep those permanents or do you want to keep those permanents? That kind of play, she just screams mono black control. That's just, you play that with Shelly, with Duress, with Go for the Throat, with the Phyrexian Obliterator, with, did I say Duress? I think I did. With Cut Down, and you have your mono black deck. Right there. Nothing else needed to add. So Lily is an A+ for me. And I'm honestly, for me, like in my opinion, she is stronger than Sorin. So yeah, that's Lily, and that concludes Dominaria United. And this is also where we have Ursa Planeswalker in this weird combination, needing to merge 2 cards to get the Planeswalker. But let's start with Saheeli, Filigree Master. She is an 4 mana Izzet drop for 3 loyalty counters. +1, scry 1, you may tap an untapped artifact you control. If you do, draw a card. -2, create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. They gain haste until end of turn. And the -4, you get an emblem with artifact creatures you control get +1/+1, and artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So we do have yet another artifact Planeswalker. After Tezzeret, after Karn, after Tamiyo as well. She is definitely more on the aggro artifact side compared to Tezzeret, compared to Karn. Where Karn is more the all-rounder, also because of his generic mana, and Tezzeret is more the mono blue controller. So Healy has more of that is it aggro vibe. She creates creatures, she creates bodies that she can also tap for her scry, for her +1. The emblem isn't that expensive, only 4, so you +1 her twice, and if your enemy is like, oh well, I don't care about her that much, you can alter. Or if you fear you lose her, you can also alter with the -4 at 4 loyalty counters. The emblem itself is quite useful. The +1/+1 on every artifact creature. If you only play artifact creatures in this deck, or mostly, that is strong. Also, she creates artifact creatures, and you have to pay less mana, so potentially more artifacts you can play. That being said, she suffers from the same thing as Tezzeret and Karn, and that is that artifacts are not that amazing in current standard rotation. That artifact creatures, there's some good artifact creatures out there, without doubt, but it lacks that reliability. Artifact creatures really lack that reliability. So I would say I'll give her a C+, the same as Tezzeret, because I think depending on if you're rather going for control artifacts or for more on the aggro side, I think you either choose one of them, and I think they both work perfectly fine in their respective decks. So yeah, we gonna keep Urza for last. Let's move over to Teferi, Temporal, Pilgrim. He is a mono blue 5 mana drop for 4 loyalty counters. Whenever you draw a card, put a loyalty counter on Teferi, Temporal, Pilgrim. His 0 ability makes you draw a card, and that makes it a +1 ability because obviously he gains a loyalty counter whenever you draw a card. Then he has a -2, create a 2/2 blue spirit creature token with vigilance, and whenever you draw a card, put the +1/+1 counter on this creature. Do you see where this is going? And then his -12 alt. Target opponent chooses a permanent they control and returns it to its owner's hand. Then they shuffle each non-land permanent they control into its owner's library. I am really surprised. I'm really, like, this is one of the cards, Julian, I'm really surprised we don't see more often in ranked, in the ladder. Because there was a time when Teferi came out, I saw him all the time, and then his play rate just dropped, and I still don't understand why, because look at this card. Look at this card. This is super strong. Ask me why no one's playing him. I mean, he is a bit on the expensive side with 5 mana. I guess you can make that, but you're also mono blue. You can protect him. You can make yourself draw more cards, so he gets ramped up even more, and his spirits get ramped up even more, and I mean, it's everything light out there. Yeah, I honestly would agree with you. I think I'm just going with what you say here, because he might not be the biggest threat because no one's in standard, because no one's playing him, but on paper, what he is up there with the Emperor. You need him, a couple of counter spells, a couple of fading hopes. I don't know, you can play the Haughty Djinn, and there you have it, like, that's your mono blue Teferi deck. Alright, and then let's go to Urza, because Urza is very different. In that you don't just draw Urza and play him. No, you have to draw 2 different cards, play those 2 different cards, and then you melt them into the Planeswalker you want to have. So on the one side you have Urza, Lord Protector. Azorius, 3 mana, 2 and 4. Artifact, instant, and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. You pay 7. If you both own and control also Lord Protector and an artifact named the Mightstone and Weakstone, exile then melt them into Urza Planeswalker. Activate only as a sorcery. So the Mightstone and Weakstone we have here. 5 mana, 5 generic mana, legendary artifact, Power Stone. When the Mightstone and Weakstone enters the battlefield, choose 1. Draw 2 cards. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. Add 2 generic, tap it to add 2 generic. This mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. And again, it melts with Urza. So that's already a really, really weird approach and a really downgrade to any Planeswalker, because you can't just play the Planeswalker and use his stuff. No, you first have to build it up. You have to move around it. And then let's look at the Planeswalker. So basically you can play those things without doing the thing, but if you want to play him, you also have to pay 7 mana. Urza comes in with 7 loyalty counters. You may activate the loyalty abilities of Urza Planeswalker twice each turn rather than only one. +2, artifact, instant, and sorcery spells you cast this turn cost 2 less to cast, you gain 2 life. +1, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Typical blue stuff, good one. 0, create 2 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens. -3, exile target non-land permanent. Not a bad one, not a bad one. And his alt -10, artifacts and planeswalkers you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Destroy all non-land permanents. His abilities are not bad, but you have to pay 15 mana. 15 mana to cast him or to get him. And you're not guaranteed to get him. You can cast 8 mana, and then you can either lose the Might and Weakstone, or you can lose Urza, Lord Protector, and then you can't get Urza Planeswalker. And then what do? So that's the thing. Like, you need to build, if you want to play Urza Planeswalker, you kind of need to build a deck around him. It's so easy to counter that as well. And it takes a lot of build up. So he's not an F, because if you pull it off, he is super strong. If you pull it off, that is. If you survive for long enough. So he's not down there with Vivian, where it's just not worth it at all. Still, and I agree with you, Julian, here, he is a D. I'm also maybe even considering giving him a D-, because to pull that off, that is so much going your way. There are so many things that need to happen. There is a bit of a tough taste to it. Let's put it that way.